Hello.
Hello everyone, good evening. This is Kiran, the trainer joining.
Hi.
Hi, Kiran.
Okay. Give me a second while I pull up the course content and we'll get started. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. I hope everyone is able to view the screen share.
Yeah.
Okay, so the recording of yesterday's demo has been made available on the WhatsApp group, and it's also available on our website here. This is the link where you can go through every information about this course. And the demo video also we have uploaded it here, so you can feel free to go through it. And today we'll start off with chapter 1 immediately. And as I've told you yesterday, chapter 1 typically focuses on making you guys understand the prerequisites of this course and something which is very interesting also. So we are going to talk about the introduction to client and server architecture, the three-tier architecture model where front end, back end, and server systems are explained, and introduction to the world of APIs. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll open a document and start putting my notes here, my rough notes. So what exactly is an API? If that is the question, I would say an API stands for application programming interface. Okay. Okay. Just wanted to tell you that we are talking about what exactly is an API, why do we use APIs, and why is that necessary in security testing. You will have answers to all these questions slowly. Okay. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. That's an abbreviation most of you are aware of. But when it comes to definition, what is it? And how can I justify the definition by giving a diagrammatical answer? So let me write the definition first and then give an explanation around the definition. So I'll say an API acts as an interface between multiple modules in an enterprise application. Okay, an API acts as an interface to enable data transfer across multiple modules in an enterprise application. That is one way how you can define it. Or an API acts as an interface between a producer application and consumer application. That's another way how people define in the industry. And let me save it here. Yeah. Now, how do I justify this definition so that you say, yes, Kiran, that is correct? So let me take a simple e-commerce application as an example. So let us say this is the e-commerce application we are talking about. And let me pick some 4 modules in this application. So this is module 1, module 2, module 3, and module 4. And let's also give some names to these modules so that we can talk a little bit technical about it. Let's say this is my login module. This is the logout module. This is add items to shopping cart. And this is about make payment. Okay. And you can think this as a simple Amazon application. Okay, let's say that is my Amazon application, and I'm taking just 4 modules. Now we need to talk about the dependency between these modules, where maybe you guys are better people to comment here whether these modules are dependent on each other or independent of each other. So can anyone tell me whether the modules login and logout, are they dependent or independent?
It's dependent.
Right. So I can say login is dependent on logout and vice versa. Right. The reason is simple. If you don't log out, you cannot log in again. And if you log in, you can definitely log out. Right. So there is always a dependency between login and logout. So I call them as dependent modules. That's correct. Similarly, if I talk about make a payment module, do you think it is dependent on login module or independent?
Can be
Make it
independent.
Independent. It can be independent.
okay. I repeat, think and tell me. Make a payment module and login module. Make a payment is dash on login module. Is that independent or dependent? Meaning in
As a
Amazon application, do you think you
as a,
can make a payment if you are not logged in? If you have not logged in into Amazon or Myntra or any other e-commerce application?
No, you can't.
so as a guest also we can make the payment and we can place the order, right? As a guest,
But
ideally.
when you say as a guest also, does that mean you are logging in?
No, I'll provide address my address and my email ID, my phone number.
Ah,
So
okay. So when you log in, it is going to fetch all those details, right? Usually, maybe what you said as a guest is okay. That probably is true. But let's take that guest user story aside. In most of the e-commerce applications, if you have to make a payment, the owner of the website, in this case Amazon or Flipkart, they would like to know your default mode of payments, your default delivery address, Maybe do you have an existing coupons that can be used for discounts, right? And probably if you are a preferred customer, you might get more, I mean, you might get a better advantage in terms of shipping little early, or maybe getting on the top extra 5% discount. All these features are applicable only if you are logged in. And because of these reasons, most of the e-commerce applications says it is better you log in, otherwise we don't let you make a payment. Logging in as a guest could be an exception, but let's not deviate. So I'll keep that guest aside for now. So I would say make a payment is mostly dependent on login module, which means I wanted to make a statement here that if you are not logged in, you won't make a payment, you cannot make a payment, something like that. Similarly, if I talk about make a payment and what is its status on add items to shopping cart, do you think it's independent of shopping cart or dependent of shopping cart?
This is independent. Oh, on shopping cart.
Yes.
It's dependent. Without
Dependent. Yeah.
adding items, we
Dependent.
can't make.
Yeah, it's dependent.
Correct. It is definitely dependent, because if you don't have items in the shopping cart, you won't make a payment, and in fact you
Yeah.
can't make a payment, right? Right? Because we don't give money for charity to Jeff Bezos. He's already super rich, probably rich number 3 in the world, right? So so that's enough. I think these 3 are enough. Now there is a reason why I'm asking you these simple questions. Point 1 is to engage you in the training. Point number 2 is to give justification to my definition. Okay. So what happens is, now that we all agreed that these modules are dependent on each other, maybe I'll take one of your names. So let's say I'll take a Girija. So Girija has logged in into Amazon maybe 1 hour back. And now that she's attending this demo class or day 1 class, she wanted to click on logout button on her browser or on the smartphone. When she clicks on logout, since logout and login are dependent, what logout will do is it will send a function call to the login module, which I'm calling it as request. Okay, so this is sending a request. Okay, a request is going, nothing but a function call is going from logout to login, and the request says, hey, login module, Girija wanted to log out. Is she actually logged in? If yes, is her session ID still valid? That's a payload query that goes from logout to login. What login says is, let me check my internal database and give you an answer whether Girija, a person called Girija, was logged in or not. If logged in, is the session ID still valid or not? So that query sent by logout to login is being checked in the database. And probably after a few milliseconds, there comes a response from login to logout in the form of a function call. And I'm calling that as a response. So for every question, there is an answer, right? For every problem, there is a solution. Similarly, for every request, there is a response. Here you see the green line indicates the traffic between logout and login modules. So logout is communicating with login by sending request. Logout is communicating with login. Sorry, login is communicating with logout by sending response, which means 2 modules are communicating with each other by sending request and response. And if you read my definition, I said data transfer across multiple modules. Just read this line, data transfer across multiple modules. The multiple modules here is nothing but login and logout. And the data transfer is nothing but sending the request and receiving the response. Similarly, if I talk about make a payment, maybe a person called, let's say Shilpa has logged in into Amazon 1 hour back, 30 minutes back, and she clicks on make a payment. Immediately make a payment will send a function call to the login module, because make a payment is dependent on login. And the request will say that is the person Shilpa logged in. Again, it will check in the database and gives back a response after a few milliseconds. And the response could be yes, she is logged in, or no, she is not logged in. Let us think little optimistically here. Positive case, it says yes, this person is logged in. Then make a payment is also dependent on add items to shopping cart, right? So it will send a request to add items to shopping cart and says, looks like Shilpa is logged in, but did she add any items to shopping cart? It will say, let me check my internal database and figure out whether she has added anything or not. And after a few milliseconds, there comes a response from add items to shopping cart to make a payment. If you look at all these orange lines, green lines, blue lines, essentially data transfer is happening between multiple modules. And all these modules are present in an enterprise application called as Amazon.in my diagram. So this boundary I have drawn, brown color boundary, is the enterprise application. So multiple modules are talking to each other. They are exchanging data with each other by sending request and response. The question here is, how are they sending a request? How are they able to send a response? What is the technology they are using? The answer to that question is API. So API is the technology that these modules are using to send the data whenever there is a request and response happening. Now, if you look at my definition, an API acts as an interface to enable data transfer across multiple modules which are present in an enterprise application. Don't you think this definition is same as what we have written here? Absolutely same. And this is what happens in every enterprise project developed. And APIs are not something new that has come yesterday or last year. They are in existence from almost 25 years. The technology of APIs have changed. That's it. But APIs are essentially in the IT industry starting from the year 2000. Okay, which means 25 years of history is there for APIs. But the prominence have come in the recent 10 years or 12 years. From 2000 to 2010, hardly anyone is aware of APIs testing, whether it is functional testing or automation testing or performance testing or security testing. Only from the year 2012 onwards, the nomenclature APIs have started to come in the market. People started understanding it. People started development towards it. People started testing towards it. Okay. Now, there is another definition I have given here. So how do I justify this definition also? Simple, same diagram I'm going to use. So in the industry, there are two types of applications, something called as a producer application and something called as a consumer application. So producer application or producer module. So what producer application does is it produces the content or response. And when I say consumer application, it consumes the content, nothing but the response that was received, it is consuming it. It produces the content upon receiving the request. After sending the request. Okay. So here, if you see, when logout is sending a request to login, and the request is like, did Girija logged in? And login is checking the database and giving back a response to logout saying that yes, Girija is logged in. So the guy who is producing the answer is called as producer. So login is the producer and logout is consuming that response. Logout is sending a request. So logout is termed as a consumer. So don't you think the second definition is also a similar thing? An API acts as an interface between any two modules. Between those two modules, one module is acting as a producer, another module is acting as a consumer. Because one of it has to beg for information, the other has to serve the information. Right? So here logout is the consumer, login is the producer. Similarly, between make a payment and add items to shopping cart, add items to shopping cart is the producer, make a payment is the consumer. Between login and make a payment is the consumer, login is the producer. Because the guy who is providing a response is called as producer. The guy who is seeking a response is called as a consumer. So between these two modules, API is present. So I can also call the modules as a producer and consumer. That's why one of these two definitions is what the industry uses. Okay. And today we are talking about a digital revolution, which we call it as Web 3.0, where almost every application, whether it is developed for .com browsers or it is developed for smartphones, they maximum use only APIs. So whether you are doing automation testing, performance testing, or security testing, if we don't know what is an API, then forget the concept of security testing. We can never be good at that without knowing these concepts. So we just understood what is an API, the help of a diagram. The second thing is, now that we understood, okay, this orange color guy API is acting as an interface between two modules. And we said that these modules are sending a request and response. But in which format the request is going and in which format the response is coming. So to answer that question, we need to understand the formats that the industry is using, okay, which we call it as data description formats. So otherwise I can say API uses data description formats during data transfer between multiple modules. Which means if I come back to my definition, I can say here, an API acts as an interface to enable data transfer using data descriptive formats. Now, what is this data descriptive formats? I'm going to write here. There are multiple data descriptive formats in the industry. We have something called text format, HTML format, XML format, JSON format, YAML format, etc. So there are so many formats in the industry. If you look at the first two formats, text format and HTML format, they are completely outdated today in terms of transferring the data from one module to another module. XML format is almost 90% outdated. JSON format is a preferred way today. I'll put it in green color. YAML is a family of JSON. It is also similar to JSON. Text format is nothing but the plain text format, and this is 100% outdated today. What I mean by this, no developer in any project across the world, in any organization, they won't use text as the mode of communication between any two modules when APIs are involved. Because text format was used in 2000, 1999, 1998. Later, HTML came, and even today, we don't use HTML. But again, don't get confused here. HTML is used for designing your web pages. I'm not talking about that characteristic of HTML. I'm talking about that characteristic of HTML where we transfer the data from one module to another module using HTML concept. The way you have to understand this is, see, if I have to communicate with you guys, right? Maybe tomorrow I wanted to check with Ramana saying, hey, Ramana, are you interested in this course? Are you enrolling or not? How would I talk to him? I just WhatsApp him. That is the technology I'm using today. That is nothing but JSON. If I talk about text format, it is like writing him an envelope, a postcard, and then putting it in the post box and sending it to Ramana's address. That is outdated today, right? No one does that old-fashioned style of writing letters on a yellow card and then putting it in the post box. That's like text method. And treat HTML as probably, I would say, as an telegram, some urgent letter that I wanted to send. Telegram had its meaning once upon a time, but today the digital revolution is much faster than Telegram. So Telegram is also outdated in all the countries. So HTML should be treated like that. But HTML had a relevance once upon a time. Telegram also had a relevance. Treat XML as, but let me say this is 90% outdated. 10% of the projects are still using it. So I'll put it in orange color. Treat XML as sending an email. So do you think I'll send an email to Ramana and say, hey, Ramana, are you interested in this course? Why don't you enroll? I hardly do that in email because I think emails are also dying slowly, except in corporates where you talk to customers and developers, that is still there. But between me and my wife, between me and my friends, emails does not exist anymore, right? It's all WhatsApp or direct communication. So think of JSON. By the way, it is 100% in usage today. I'll tell what is JSON later, but it is 100% being used today. From the last 10 years, JSON is ruling the IT industry when it comes to data transfer from one module to another module. This is like your instant chat messages, whether it is WhatsApp or something similar to that you might be using. Okay. So APIs uses this data descriptive format. So I would like to say that APIs uses below data descriptive formats. The first one we call it as plain or clear text, HTML, XML, JSON, YAML, etc. Okay. This is 100% outdated. %90 outdated, 10% usage, 100% usage. When it comes to YAML, maybe I would see 50% usage. And usually the developer of the project decides what is correct for the project. As a tester, we just follow their decisions. We don't, decide all these things. And okay, before I take it forward, any questions from the audience? Any questions, guys? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Okay.
So, sir, the module is communicated with database. So, is there also use the API or anything else?
Yeah, they use APIs only to communicate with the database.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Yeah. So now, if obviously, we need to understand how the text format looks like, HTML format looks like, XML, JSON looks like. So I'll just give a quick rough idea about it. Only for your knowledge, we don't have to worry about the exact syntax. A text format looks like, probably I can say, I'll say text format, then HTML format, XML format, and JSON format. Points that we have to know in text format is it does not have any style associated with it. Okay. So there is no style that text format follows. It simply says I follow a free format, meaning it does not have any syntax. So example of text format can be, maybe I wanted to send a message to one of my friend that hey, I'm attending a security testing course with Mr. Kiran from 9 to 10. So that message, when I type it in WhatsApp and click on send button, it goes to the other person, right? Or let's say I'm typing it in this chat window only. So I'm telling to my friend, say something like this: hi, I'm in a training from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm in a training class from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. from the instructor called Kiran. Let's say that is the message I sent you on the WhatsApp or on the chat. Assume that Microsoft Teams, which I'm using right now, this software from Microsoft is using plain text format. Then how does that go from my computer to your computers if they're using plain text format? It can go in this format, or it can go in any format like this also. So there is no proper styling I'm following. I'm just pressing enters wherever I want. Because it does not have any style. You can send it in any format, in any paragraph style, in any plain text format. This format was used in the very old days. Now it is no longer being used. If I talk about HTML format, it has some basic style. So I'll say it uses tags, nothing but this. So HTML uses tags structure. Example, it starts with a HTML tag and it ends with a HTML tag like this. Any tag that's ending will have this /. And it can have a body tag, and to end it we use this body tag also again. Then I wanted to send a message like heading 1, which we call it as h1 in HTML format, and I'm closing it, and the message I want to send is this one, this line. Hey, I'm in a training class from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. from the instructor Kiran. So this message will go probably in this style from my computer to your computer via the Microsoft Teams software. This is just a rough example, not 100% same example, but this is how HTML format looks like when two modules are communicating with each other. If I talk about the XML format, it also uses the tags structure. There is no doubt about it. And an example of it will be, you will have the word XML instead of HTML. And here you will have something called a message. Okay. And sometimes you might have even something else called envelope. All you have to do is, if the word XML is seen, we can easily conclude that it's in XML format. If you see the word HTML, assume that it is in HTML format. And if we talk about JSON, which is the one the industry is preferring now, let's talk a little bit about it. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. That is the abbreviation for JSON. Okay. And the second thing that you have to know is, it uses key value pair structure. Here it uses tags structure, right? In a HTML and XML, it uses tags structure. But here we use key and value pair structure. Example, it starts with a flower bracket, it ends with a flower bracket. Okay? And here you will write the key in double quotations and then a colon, again value in double quotations, to assign a value to the key. If you have another key, then you need to put a comma so that it indicates a second key is also there. If you have one more, again you will put a comma. Like this you will continue. Let's say I have only 4 keys and 4 values, then you will not put a comma. So this is one of the simple examples for JSON format. If I have to write the example for this message which I have sent on the chat, right? So I can convert this into a meaningful name saying, training timings. And I will say 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. That is what you sent here, right? 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. So that is treated as timings, and it will be going to other computer using this. And the instructor name, right? So maybe we'll call it as instructor name, Kiran. And if you want one more, I can type training name, like what training you are taking, security testing. So like this, the JSON format will go from one computer to another computer, from one module to another module, if the developer is using JSON as the mode of communication between two modules. So when you see a format like this, flower brackets and double quotations, key and value, you should be quick enough to judge and say, hey, this is in JSON format. Am I clear, guys, in all the formats? If you have questions, please check.
Clear.
Kiran, about JSON, you are talking about one more thing now. Can you show what are all the transformations you listed down 7, 8 now?
This one.
Yeah, okay. So you mean to say XML old one, right? Okay.
XML is outdated. So when you are doing security testing, see, forget security testing. When you are doing testing, you might work with HTML, you might work with XML or JSON or text or YAML or anything. The idea is, as a test engineer, can we recognize in which format the data is going from one module to another module? Because accordingly, our testing strategies can change. Most of the manual testers, they don't care about all these things because they don't get into that much extent discussion. That's why they're called as black box test engineers. Black box means you don't care what is inside. It's like a frog in the well. So in my view, black box testers are frogs in the well. A white box tester is someone who knows more details about the architecture. Accordingly, a better testing can be conducted. So those white box testers are nothing but the frogs which are jumping out of the well and getting into the real world. And that's where your security testing gives you the scope. Okay. So when I'm teaching you security testing, or when you are learning security testing from some other trainer also, the word JSON is used most commonly. The word XML is used commonly. The word API is used commonly. And if you don't know what is JSON, what is data descriptive format, what is API, what is a producer, what is a consumer, then we are back to the basics where our basics fundamentals are incorrect. So you don't enjoy the security testing. And then we come to a conclusion that security testing is difficult. It is not my cup of tea. And then we run away from that subject. So to ensure that we don't get into such traps in this course, we're talking slowly a little bit about the basics. Okay, so we have just completed this highlighted portion in chapter 1. Okay. Assuming that everything is clear, now we'll talk about the client and server architecture, which is obviously very much important from a testing perspective. I don't want to say it is important only for security testers. It is important for every person. Okay. So before we talk about the client and server architecture model, because this is going to play a very crucial role in our security testing. So whatever I'm showing you today, and since time is not sufficient for me to complete this topic today, I'll teach only half today, remaining half tomorrow. But this is 100% needed during security testing, because all these terminologies are going to be used practically. And we will not have so much of time to again recap these things at that point of time. That's why I'm telling it right away so that you have the basics clear. It is something like, before I teach you the spelling of apple, as a primary teacher, first I'll teach you alphabets so that you can understand, okay, APPLE or alphabets joining together we call it as apple. So that is what I'm showing you now. Coming to the basic question, what is a client? What is a server? What are the examples of client and what are the examples of server? Can anyone tell me what is a client according to you?
So client is our desktop, the like application desktop
Okay.
is a
Okay.
client.
Okay.
So
Any
whenever you open the Amazon application, right, Amazon website, then it will go and hit the server. We'll get the response.
Mhm.
Client is the customer.
Okay.
Client is the UI application through which the user goes through, and the server is the response from where it's coming from. I mean, say for example, if I click a button, what am I supposed to see? That's coming from server.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think all the definitions are correct. I think even Ramana gave an answer on the chat, front-end communication channel. All the answers are perfect. So I will just put it in a similar language. So I'll say a client is an application or a device that sends a request to the server. Right? Someone who sends a request, I call that person as a client. That person could be a human being, like you said, or that person could be an application running on the browser, or that could be an application running on the mobile app, right? So example of client could be like one of you said, browser. So browser is the world's favorite client because everyone uses browser to send a request. Like every day you check google.com, every day you check ChatGPT these days. Everyone goes to gmail.com, facebook.com, instagram.com, youtube.com. They're all requests that you are sending on your browser called Google Chrome or Firefox or Microsoft Edge or Safari, right? So browser is the favorite client of everyone. Apart from browser, you have thousands of examples for clients. In this course, I'm teaching you 10 tools, right? Like I said yesterday, whether I teach you 10 tools or 1,000 tools, all the tools I'm teaching are nothing but clients only. Because using the tool, I'm going to send a request to server and see if security testing can be conducted correctly or not. So all the tools I'm teaching you are all clients. Example, Bob Suite tool I'm teaching is a client. Or Zap tool, if I teach you, it is a client. Nmap is a tool I'm teaching you, which is a client, etc. So many tools are there like that. And coming to server, what is a server? Simple again. It is also an application or a device that receives a client request to analyze it, then to process it, then to give a response back to the client. So I'll say a server is an application or a device that receives a client request to analyze it, plus process it, plus submit a response to the client. And coming to the examples of servers, there are a lot of servers in the industry. You have servers in the form of software. You have servers in the form of hardware, meaning infrastructure. Let's talk about the software centric servers. We call them as web servers or application servers. Example, Apache Tomcat is a server. Microsoft IIS is a server. IBM WebSphere is a server. Nginx is a server. Glassfish is a server. These are all examples of web servers or application servers. So Apache Tomcat, Nginx, IBM WebSphere, Glassfish, Microsoft IIS, they're all examples of web servers or application servers, software servers, I will say. We also have infrastructure servers, meaning the hardware. They are provided by providers like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Control-S, etc. They're all examples of infrastructure, nothing but hardware servers. Okay. Most of the times when I talk to people, right, maybe during interviews or in these trainings, most of the people, they say they are aware of client and server architecture, but what they know is client sends a request, server gives a response. That is correct, but that is not the holistic part of it. So if we have to talk about client and server, we can talk about it. When I'm teaching you, I will teach you for 1 hour. But in the interviews, you cannot talk 1 hour only on one topic, right? So in 2 minutes, you should explain this entire structure that I'm giving it. 2 minutes or 1 minute, because the interviewer will not have so much of patience, right? And this architecture, what I'm going to show you now, is what happens between client and server for any enterprise application or a consumer based application developed by any organization across the globe. This is the standard architecture. So I'll say here client and server architecture. So I will say this job of a client is to send a request. So I'll draw a line like this. And the job of a server is to give back a response back to the client. So I'll draw like this. But what are they actually exchanging? Let's talk about that. So this guy sends a request. Let's call it as API request, or it can be a web request also. Web request means a request that's going on the browser or on the smartphone. And then in return, the server gives a response. Let me call it as API response or web response. Let's try to clarify what do I mean by this request and response. Example of a request can be when I type something like news.google.com. That's a web request I'm typing, and I'm getting results here, right? So this is one request which I'll copy. I'll just put it here as an example, saying, this is one request I have. Okay. And did we receive response from the server for this request? Of course, the answer is yes, right? You are seeing the response here. And any website obviously gives response in HTML format. That's a known thing, right? So I wrote HTML in the responsive section. Does that mean every request will have response as HTML? May not be. There are so many other types of requests. Example, I will type something that I'm aware of. That is a request I have. So this is the request I submitted on my browser. I'll just put it here. And did I receive a response? If you see, yes, I received a response. And carefully, if you look at it, it is starting with a flower bracket, ending with a flower bracket. In between, you have so many keys and so many values. You see, keys and values are there everywhere. So this is obviously in JSON format. So sometimes the request you are sending to server can also give a response in JSON, because that's how the developer has designed that request to work with. So does that mean every request will be either JSON or HTML? May not be. So there is another request I'm typing on my browser. And you see, I got the response, and this time it is in XML format. So for this request, I got the response in XML format. So every request you send on the internet can have a response in any format. I just took three examples here. It can be in HTML format. It can be in JSON format. It can be in XML. If you want one more, I can show you text format also. So this is in text format. Like this, there will be thousands of examples on the internet where the request sent to the server will receive a response either in HTML format or XML or JSON or text or YAML or a document getting downloaded. It can be anything. That is the first thing we have to know about client and server architecture. Second thing is, every time you send a request, this request is associated with a protocol. Every request you send is associated with a protocol, and we all have learned about protocol in our office projects in our college days. But still, let's talk about it one more time. So if I have to say what is a protocol, I will say it is a set of rules, regulations, standards, guidelines that tells client and server how to communicate with each other. Example, in this class, whatever I'm teaching you, there is a protocol. Example, the class starts at 9 o'clock in the evening, my time. That's a protocol. It ends at 10 o'clock evening, my time. That's a protocol. The training has to be in English to ensure that every participant understands. That's a protocol. The trainer has to clarify the queries of the participants. That's a protocol. And when the trainer is teaching you, you have to be on mute, but questions are always welcome by unmuting or chatting. That's a protocol, right? I cannot be rude to you. That's a protocol. You cannot be rude to me. That's a protocol. So in the world, we are all living with some protocols, right? Otherwise, every day is a war between me and my neighbor, between this country and the other country, right? There are always some discipline, some protocols for against which we are all living. Similarly, we know that client is sending a request and server is giving a response. Why don't you think a client says, let me act as a server and I will give you response, and server says, let me act as a client and I will give you request? That never happens, right? The role reverse will never happen. And why should server give a response? Why can't server have ego issues? Saying, I don't care about you, client, I will not give you response. Why can't client have an ego saying, I won't send you a request first of all? But those scenarios never happen because they're not human beings, right? But still, for every request, there has to be a response sooner or later. How is that even possible on the internet, which does not have life? The answer simply say protocol. So protocol, I will say it is a set of rules and regulations that abides how client and server should communicate with each other. Without protocol, you don't get a response from server. In fact, client won't even send a request, right? So there are so many protocols available in the internet, and each protocol has a different rules and regulations, right? Example of protocols in the internet: HTTP is a protocol, HTTPS, FTP, SFTP, MQTT, JMS, file, SQL, JDBC, IMAP, POP3, SMTP, GraphQL. Then you have LDAP, etc. So there are so many protocols that internet has got, the World Wide Web has got, and each protocol has a different purpose, right? Example, HTTP and HTTPS are used to send any type of file on the internet between client and server. That file can be a document, can be an image, can be a video, can be a text file, can be a document, can be JSON, can be XML, can be HTML, can be text, can be YAML, any file. You can send from browser to server, server to browser using HTTP or HTTPS. If you talk about FTP and SFTP, it is file transfer protocol and secure file transfer protocol. These protocols are used to send only files, that too from FTP client to FTP server, and they use a separate software, not the browser. Then you have MQTT, message queuing telemetry protocol, that is used for transferring large volumes of data generated by heavy applications such as YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google. Then you have Java messaging services, very old protocol used for Java. File protocol is used by Windows operating systems to save a file, to minimize a file, to maximize a file, to open a file, to close a file. SQL and JDBC are used for databases, to retrieve the data, to create the data, to update the data, delete the data, drop the database. IMAP and POP3 are used for incoming messages or incoming emails. SMTP protocol is used for sending emails or sending messages. GraphQL protocol is used by Facebook for API communication. LDAP protocol is used by Windows Active Directory users, mostly by the IT team, the networking team. It stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. So many protocols are there in the internet. All these protocols might have to be tested by you based on what your project is using. But 99% of the times, we test HTTP and HTTPS based applications, because the entire internet, the mobile apps, the .com browser era, we use mostly HTTP and HTTPS. So we need to understand what is HTTP and what is HTTPS. I'm sure you are aware of it, but it is my job to recap it. So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And this protocol is used to transfer data between client and server. Okay. And HTTP is a unsecured protocol by design. Meaning when the industry created HTTP protocol, and it was created almost in 1990s or 1980s, it was regarded as a unsecured protocol by design itself. Okay, it is an unsecured protocol by design because it transfers the data in plain text format between client and server. Thus, a hacker can see what is your data going from client to server or server to client, and he can steal it, he can modify it, he can tamper it, he can damage it. Which means if the client is sending some data to server using HTTP protocol, and let's say the data client is sending to server is, I need rupees 500. Let's say that is a message client is sending to server, and it is using HTTP protocol. Let's say the message is HTTP protocol, and this message is going from client to server. In between, a hacker comes and he sees the message. He will just change it to I need rupees this one. So this message will come to server now. Like this, server will read this one, which is like so many zeros. So I don't know what is that number. Server says, oh my God, who on the earth will have so much of money? So what server will do? It simply says, sorry, I don't have money. That is a message client will get. And obviously client will be little unhappy because the server did not help for a small money. But client knows it is small money, server doesn't know it is small money because a hacker changed the data. How come hacker change the data? Because hacker is able to see the data what client is sending to server, right? And let's say server says, okay, I'm sending you. If that is a response coming from server, hacker sees it and he might say, okay, I need 90% interest on this money every month. See, the message has been completely tampered by the hacker when it goes to from server to client, and client says, oh my God, I cannot bear so much of interest. So that guy is unhappy. He will disconnect the relation with server for that request. Similarly, when you send any data from client to server using HTTP, such as your username, password, your Aadhaar number, your social security number, or any other sensitive data, hackers can steal it. They can damage it. They can tamper it. They can destroy it. Just like we say middleman, right? Between any two human beings, if you have a middleman, that person can always add the required, masala stuff and then change the tone of conversation and destroy the relationship between two people. Same thing happens if you use HTTP protocol. Okay? So that's the problem with HTTP format. To fix this problem, we have come with HTTPS. So I'm talking about HTTP. It was designed in Web 1.0 era, where internet was all about digital newspaper only. In the year 1995, when internet was there, it is only to open some website and read the content. There is nothing called liking it, commenting it, sharing it, logging in, logging out, making a payment. No bullshit was there those days. It was just reading the digital newspaper content, whether it is an army article or a filmy article or the news of the country, whatever. But slowly from 2000 onwards, Yahoo chat came into picture, Yahoo email came into picture. Slowly, there is a concept of personalization happening in the internet. That's when they thought HTTP cannot be used, so they wanted HTTPS to come into picture. So HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol with security. And it is also used to transfer data from client to server. And it is obviously a secured protocol by design because it transfers the data not in plain text format, but in encrypted format. Encrypted means protected format. And this protocol is designed in Web 2.0 era from the year 2000 onwards. Encrypted means when whatever question the client is sending to server, like the client is sending, okay, let's say it is sending some username as Kiran and the password as testing or training. Client can see this message as it is, okay, And the server also sees the message once it comes to server, but during the journey from client to server, the username will be seen as something like this. The password will also be seen as something like this. Hacker does not know what is this bullshit language. So hacker cannot tamper it because he does not understand what is this nonsense. So that protection is coming from HTTPS protocol. So to convert HTTP to HTTPS, two cryptographic protocols were used. One is SSL, the other is TLS. SSL stands for Secure Sockets Layer. TLS stands for Transport Layer Security. SSL is actually outdated today, but TLS is latest as of today. So HTTP plus SSL cryptographic protocol combination resulted in HTTPS, or HTTP plus TLS combination resulted in HTTPS today. Now within TLS again, you have TLS version 1.0, TLS version 1.1, TLS version 1.2, TLS version 1.3, and this is latest today. Because as the technology is changing, different versions of protocols are getting changed, and as a tester we have to test all these things. I'll show you how to test these protocols tomorrow, but remember TLS 1.3 is latest. So if I come back to the diagram, in the protocol I would like to say we use HTTP and HTTPS is secured and this is unsecured. We just discussed about some 20% of client and server architecture. We'll talk about the continuation of this in tomorrow's class. Do you have any questions, guys, here?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there are no questions, thank you for your participation.
One thing, Kiran, just a generic one. See, yesterday you are telling OSAP 2021 like that, na? So is there every year that 2021, 23, 24 like that every year it will change? What is the latest one for that one now?
23 is the latest right now. Every year,
Okay.
the OWASP industry will revise the top 10 attacks. The order will change. Like whatever was top 1 last year, today it might be top 2 or top 5. The order will change,
Okay.
zigzag order. Just
Only
like in
order, but there is no change in any security conditions like that?
no, even that might also change. Maybe a new entry might come in the top 10. If it was left unnoticed by the developers, a new entry might be there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, guys. I'll see you tomorrow's class.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.